Awesome, awesome. I appreciate you taking the time to be on the OPSM podcast. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Nice gear, man. I just gotta say that quickly.
What's that?
Nice gear.
Oh, nice. Thanks.
Let's say that quickly.
I like the jersey in the back. Is that a Maradona jersey in the back?
Yeah, it's Maradona over there.
All right,
I
decent.
got Pele on the other side.
Oh, wow. That's a decked out room.
That's real. I thought mine was cool. Never mind.
Nah, you can't beat France. So
Never mind. Never mind.
Awesome. So we'll get started. So thank you, everybody, for watching. This is the OPSM podcast. On the left hand of the screen, we have Jesse Falanga, who is an OPSM GM. And then at the bottom of the screen, we have Jim Brennan, head coach of York 9 FC in the CPL. So thank you, Jim, for being a part of this OPSM podcast.
no problem. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. So I guess the first question, Jim, that I wanted to ask you was, we wanted to kind of take the viewers through your professional career leading into your management career. So we wanted to kind of start off where did it all begin, or where did the passion for football begin and the origin?
For me, it was at a young age. I was probably maybe four years old, and my mother put me in football and soccer, and she said, you know, you've got to be active, you got to do something, and you're kicking everything at a young age, so let's try this. And that was it. That was my love since I could walk. I was always trying to kick something, and then I fell in love with the game, and obviously with the ball, and then that was it. You know, I played locally here in the GTA, and ended up playing provincial team, national team, and ended up going to an under-17 World Cup in Japan, representing Canada. And then after that, I came back, and I went to Europe and spent 13 years in England, and then came back home and played for Toronto FC Major League Soccer for a number of years. So, you know, I think it's mainly down to my mother. My mother, you know, she's from Scotland. My father's Irish. So, you know, the game's in our blood. But you know, they never pushed me at a young age. They just wanted me to enjoy it and fall in love with the game, which I did. And then when I got to a certain age, then that's when they really started saying, okay, you know, you've got some potential here, and let's push them a little bit. But it's all down to my mother. She was the one that put me in the game.
That's awesome. Talk to me about the transition. So your transition overseas to play in England with Bristol City. How did that come about from coming from Canada to England?
Well, it was a guy called Tony Taylor. You know, he's been around the game for a very long time here in Canada as well as in the UK. Originally, I was supposed to go to Glasgow Celtic. That's where I thought I was going. But the manager at the time was a guy called Tommy Burns. He ended up getting fired.
Oh, wow.
And then my next stop was going to be Stoke City. So I got prepared for that. Lou Macari ended up getting fired. And it was last minute that Tony called me and says, right, he goes, you're going to Bristol City. Russell Osmond, who's a legend over in the UK, played for England. He wants to have a look at you. I ended up going over there for a week, played against Tottenham, scored a goal and set one up. He pulled me in the office the next morning and said, you know, I'm offering you a contract. You're going back home for 4 days, grab your stuff and get yourself back to England. So that's how that came about. But the transition was very difficult, very, very difficult. You know, the only way that I could put it is that in comparison, it would be an English guy coming over here trying to take a young Canadian's hockey job. Maybe
Yeah.
what are you doing playing hockey? So if I reverse that now, it would be a Canadian going over now trying to take an Englishman's job back in 94, 95. There wasn't many foreigners that were over there.
Yeah.
And to be honest, they made it very difficult for me. But it wasn't after, you know, a couple months went by where I think they realized, you know, that, you know, the guy could play, he sticks up for himself, he's got a bit about him. And then that was when the respect settled in on both parties. And, you know, I spent 13 years over in England, but, you know, the transition was very, very difficult. You know, the speed of play, the demand, the rigors of training every day, the games, the mentality. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah, touch base on the mentality aspect. Like, what was the mindset that you had to have when you were going on trial at the time, and that transition to move away from home?
My mindset was I wanted to be a professional footballer, and nothing was going to stop me.
Yeah.
You know, that was in my head. I knew what I wanted, and I went over there, and there was nobody was going to get in my way. And that mindset, you know, you can't teach that.
No.
You know, that's something that's got to come within. When you got a passion for something, when you love something, you want something bad enough, you've got to have in your mind that nobody's going to stop you. You know, as coaches, we can try to teach them tactics and get them fit and prepare them and get them to understand the game. But that passion and that wanting something has got to come within here.
Yeah.
You know, that's within that individual. And if it's in them, then we've got to try to get it out of them as coaches and push them along the way. But, you know, you can't teach that.
Jim, I wanted to ask about your time at Norwich. So yeah, we know, I mean, the championship is very, very grueling physically and mentally. What was it like that year, you guys, you know, at the club? What was the atmosphere like when you guys won promotion? And also, what was it like preparing for and then playing in the Premier League the following year?
You know, it was, I mean, getting promoted was amazing. Yeah, we won the league by a number of points. And I think it was West Ham and West Brom came up with us. And I remember the celebrations that we had, and you know, there must have been half a million people in the streets in Norwich. The place was just absolutely crazy. We had the double-decker bus going around the city with the trophy, and you know, big parade. And then playing in the Premier League, I mean, it's a dream. It's, you know, every young footballer wants to get to the best league in the world, and you know, it was so difficult. And they always say, you know, the Premier League's made up of three divisions, right? You've got your top six that are always there, that are fighting to win it and getting into Europe. Then you got the middle bracket, you know, your Evertons and the other teams that just sit there every single year. They're not going to win anything. They're not getting relegated. And then you got the bottom half, which is always fighting with the top half of the championship, where they're going up and down, relegation, promotion. And so, you know, those games were very, very competitive, but you can see the difference when you're playing a Liverpool and Arsenal, Man United, you know, Chelsea. The standard's completely different. You know, these guys don't make mistakes. But, you know, it was amazing. It was, you know, some of the games and just walking out into the field and looking across and going, oh, here's, you know, there's Steven Gerrard, you know, there's Wayne Rooney, there's these guys. And, but it was a great time in my life. But, you know, at the same time, the championship is one of the best leagues in Europe. You know, you look at the championship now, and, you know, Leeds and Sheffield Wednesday, these guys are getting 35, 40,000 every single game.
Yeah.
You know, Nottingham Forest, the same. They're selling out every week in and week out. It's such a tough league, but, you know, the standard of play, it's amazing. But, you know, everybody's got one goal, and that's to get to the Premier League.
Okay. Do you have a favorite ground from your time in England?
Yeah, you know, I love Villa Park. Villa Park was, you know, great stadium, and you know, St. James's. I like St. James's. I mean, that's probably one of my favorite. St. James's Park was awesome.
That's wonderful. So then, how excited were you to come back to TFC, and how did that process come about as well?
Well, I was at Southampton at the time, and my contract was coming up. George Bullard, he pulled me in and said, listen, Jimmy, he goes, I can't offer you anything right now. He goes, I got this young kid that's coming through. And he goes, you know, we're going to be selling him. And he goes, but just hold on a minute. He goes, because I think something's going to happen here. And he goes, but I want you to stay. He goes, but I can't offer you anything just this moment. I said, well, who's coming through? He went, Gareth Bale. I said, Gareth Bale? You're joking.
Who's that?
Yeah, exactly. Look at him now, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up getting called from, you know, a few teams in England. I thought I was gonna probably stay at Southampton, but then I had Middlesbrough and Leicester that were talking with me. And then TFC phoned up and said, look, you know, we're joining Major League Soccer. I said, well, who's involved? They said, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. Right away, you know, it's going to be it's going to be done properly. You know, they go about their business the right way. You know, they said, look, we're building a stadium, and these are our goals, and this is what I want. And they said, would you want to come back and play? And I thought, you know, I was 29, I think, at the time, and I was like, you know, I think it'd be great to come back. You know, start with Toronto FC, help it get going, and gives an opportunity for my friends and family to come watch me play. They never really got to see me play much. You know, they could watch on TV once in a while, but you know, for them to leave their jobs and come on over for a month or two, it wasn't happening. So I just thought the timing was right, and I could come back and you know, plant my roots back in the city, and then prepare yourself for after football. And you know, that's how that came about. And I ended up signing with Toronto FC, and I spent something like 8 years with the club in different capacities within the organization. But it was great. I really enjoyed it. I've got no complaints about coming back home and playing for Toronto FC.
Coming back to playing for Toronto FC, playing obviously in the Championship and the Premier League, what would you say was the what would you say was the most challenging thing playing back in the MLS compared to the Championship? And
I think, back in the UK, it's very tactical, very tactical. The games and the mindset of the players was totally different. And with Major League Soccer, it was weird because you start games off with your tactics, but then for some reason it goes out the window.
Yeah.
And it becomes like a track meet, and it was back and forth, and it was open, and I couldn't believe how athletic the American guys were, and the young Canadian kids coming through. They were so athletic, but I think the tactical side wasn't really there. But I think when you look at Major League Soccer now, it's heading in the right direction. Some of those games are spectacular. The tactics, the way they play, the rhythm of the games. I really enjoy it. But it took a while for me to get used to, the style of play in Major League Soccer, how open it was. And I remember sitting in the dressing room with Danny Dichio and Carl Robinson and, guys that ended up coming back from Europe, and we were all saying the same thing. It's just crazy how athletic this league is. But it was great. I actually really enjoyed it. It took a little bit of time to adjust, but, in the end, it was good.
Perfect. So coming to your end of your career, when did you know that you wanted to start transitioning into becoming in the management role?
It was, I loved the game, and I loved all aspects of it. And when I was playing, I started getting my coaching license because I knew eventually I wanted to stay in the game. I wanted to coach, and but I also wanted to see the other side of the game, the business side, and how that worked. Yeah. And I sat down with Mo Johnson. He said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, look," I said, "I'm getting my coaching education." I said, "But at the same time, I want to see how it works with the salary cap and, buying and selling players." And so he took me up into the office and said, "Look," he goes, "I want you to come in and be the assistant general manager of Toronto FC." He goes, "And see how you like that." So I spent a year with him, working the salary cap and seeing how that side of the game worked, which was great. And then after that, I really started to focus on the coaching. So I ended up getting the U17s at Toronto FC, which was great. And if anybody's getting into coaching or any players are retiring from the game and want to coach, I think the best thing that you can do is go coach youth. Because then you start to really understand who you are as an individual. You can make your mistakes with under 17s, but you can't make those same mistakes when you're with the first team or the pros. Yeah, because they're always trying to figure you out. Whereas the young guys they're like sponges. You can make your little mistakes and you correct things here and there. You start to get a better understanding of how to communicate with the young players, because they're like sponges. But it's also difficult when you first start coaching, when you're sitting down in the dressing room with all these guys and they're focused on you. So you start to understand, okay, this is how I've got to relate to them. This is how I've got to speak to them. This is my tactics of what I want to do now. I've prepared it, but how do I put this together now with these young guys? And so you really start to understand how to coach. And it was the best thing I did. I was there for 2 years, really got to learn my trade. And then I ended up getting called up by Aaron Vinter, who was the head coach at the time. And he said, "Jimmy," he goes, "I want you with the first team now." Which was great because, I had 1.5 years, 2 years with the young guys. And now to make that jump back up into the pros was great for me. And it was an easy transition. I think if I went straight to the first team, it would have been very difficult because you wouldn't be able to make your mistakes as a coach the way that you could with the young boys.
Was there a manager, Jim, that really gave you that impetus to want to coach? Or was it always something that you wanted to do?
No, it was something that I always wanted to do was to coach. But I think every coach along the way plays a role in who you are as an individual and a coach, right? You take a little bit of everybody, and then you figure out your DNA and your identity of who you want to be as a coach. So every manager that I had, they had some great great things that I really liked, and then obviously they had some things that I didn't like. But you take the positives from everybody along the way that you've coached from. You know, that coach that coached me when I was 5 years old, the way he handled me and coached me all the way up to, you know, playing in the Premier League with Nigel Worthington. Yeah, you know, you take a little bit of everybody. But to say there was one manager, I don't know. I had some great managers along the way.
And I gotta ask, who was the toughest manager you ever had, and tell me why?
It was probably Joe Jordan.
Yes.
So Joe Jordan played for AC Milan. He played for Man United. Big striker. But he was the most intimidating man you've ever seen in your life. He had no teeth, but he had false teeth. And every time he started screaming and yelling, his teeth were coming out. He's a big man. He was about maybe 6'3", 6'4", and he was absolutely ripped. Like the fittest guy that you've ever seen. But he was so intimidating. But he somehow, you know, came across as a nice man at times. But you knew, like, don't upset Big Joe, because if you do, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
But he was probably the hardest manager that I ever had. But he was good. He looked after me.
There's a perception that English managers are all very, very hard, and they give you the hairdryer treatment. As a player, when you moved over, was that something that was new to you, or were you just that came? It was just coaching. No,
you know, they were hard, and I knew I had to learn my trade. I had to listen to the coaches. I wasn't in a position to voice my opinion. I was just sitting there going, okay, geez, man, this guy's pretty intense. They were all that way, you know. But every manager was different. You know, some were full on, you know, always at you, and then there was others that were quite chilled, and at times where they start raising their voice and coming at you a little bit. But you know, the managers over there, they're quite hard, but I think they've got to be, because as a professional coach, your shelf life's not long. You know, you're in that job for a certain period, and you're holding on for as long as you can. So really, you're hired to get fired. So you've got to get the best out of those players as quick as possible, and do whatever it takes. And that's why I think it's so intense, because every game matters. You need those 3 points, and if you're losing, you're fired. You know, so that's why it's very, very intense in that dressing room sometimes.
You know, talking about, you know, you were saying, like, you know, as soon as you get hired, you're fired. How long do you think a manager needs to take time in order to really develop the style of play of what they want?
You don't have much time.
Yeah.
You know, now look, 90% of the time if you get hired as a professional coach, you're taking over a team that's not doing well.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times when you're getting in that dressing room, you know, they're lower than a snake's belly.
Yeah.
You've got to go in there and you've got to try to pick these guys up. You've got to implement your style of play, your philosophy. You're kind of hoping that you can get to the end of the season, right? So that now, okay, I can release a few players. I can bring some more players in. I can get preseason under my belt and work the tactics. But you know, it's so difficult. And you know, I talk to managers all the time that, you know, they get in there and they're going, I don't know how I'm going to do this, because I don't have a budget. I can't go and get the players that I want. And now I've got to figure out, how am I going to play? Now, every manager's got their own style of play of you know, how they want to express themselves and say, this is, you know, we're going to play a 4-3-3, or we're going to play a 3-5-2.
Yeah.
But you can't implement your style of play and your philosophy if you don't have the horses. Yeah. So you've got to adjust now to the players that you've got in that dressing room and figure out, okay, how do I get the best out of these guys? And what's the best formation for these players in this dressing room? And you've got to work with them. You got to figure them out, and you got to try to understand them as quick as possible, get the best out of them. And like I said, if you can hold off to the end of the season, then you can get the players that you want in to play your certain style and your formation. But right away, you've got to figure out what suits these guys and how am I going to get the best out of them.
Yeah, it seems like you're always set up to lose.
It's difficult, you know. It's tough, but you know, you've got to have thick skin and to be a pro manager, and it's a difficult job, but you know, I love it. You know, and guys, I think we just love the pressure. Yeah, you know, we just love it. And I think if we didn't have that pressure, you know, as a player and as a manager, you know, I think it's weird. Like, you probably wouldn't be who you are today.
Yeah.
You know, it's what we thrive on. We love that pressure, and we love the atmospheres in games, and you know, we thrive off it.
As a manager, you know, you have your ups and downs during the season, and when you're winning consistently, obviously your head's at a, you know, you're at a high level, you feel like you're doing things right. But what's going through your head when maybe you're not doing well, you're having 2-3 losses in a row? Do you right away think about switching formation, the team, or what's going through your head at that point?
Well, you start, you know, you get back into the dress room or the training ground, and you start going over video, and you start saying, okay, where's our mistakes coming from? You know, how are we losing 2-3 games in a row here, and how do we correct this problem?
Yeah.
So you sit down with the staff and you go over absolutely everything to figure out how do we get out of this. The players they're down now. We've lost 3 games or 4 games in a row. Mm-hmm. How do we get that mentality, that positive energy back in there and make them believe in themselves that you're going to win that next game? Mm-hmm. So it's the whole psyche as well that you've got to work with. Now, I mean, look, if you win 3-4 games, it's great. Mm-hmm. No problem, because the players are taking care of themselves. They've got that winning mentality. They're on a streak, and it's just you maintaining them now. Yeah. But that's why they always say, you know, keep your lows high and your highs low, so that you're always like this, right? Regardless, you win, no problem, back at it. You lose, okay, we're back at it. So you've got to keep it stable across the whole board, because if you end up like this and you're down and everybody's down and you're back up again, it's a disaster. You've got no control. But if you can keep it like this, you know, you've got a better chance of keeping everything in a rhythm in that whole dressing room. Now, your job as a manager is to come in there, and if you've lost 3 games in a row, you've got to come back in positive, because the players feed off of you. Yeah. Now, if I came in and we've lost 4 games in a row, my head's down, my shoulders are down, the players are looking going, he's down and everybody's down. But you've regardless what happens, you've always got to come back in that next day, positive energy, go around to the players, have a conversation, shake their hands, you know, try to keep things light and bubbly. Because like I say, you set the tone every single day when you step on that pitch. Because you're the gaffer, you're the manager, you're the guy that's leading by example now. So you've got to set the tone.
So go ahead, Jesse, if you have something.
I was just going to ask, obviously, how are you liking your role now at York 9, and what's the atmosphere around the club, and how's that going for you?
Yeah, you know, I'm really enjoying it. You know, I think we've got a good squad. We're playing some good football right now, and we've added some new pieces to the roster. So, you know, we were down in preseason. We had in Orlando for about 8 days. We're supposed to be down there for 2 weeks. We got called back because of COVID-19. But you know, we were very happy where we were with the squad that we have. And it's a shame that this happened, because we're really looking forward to the season. Obviously, you know, this is coming out. Everybody's got to be safe, and we've got to, you know, follow protocol. But, you know, selfishly, we're thinking, we got a good squad here. We wish we'd be playing right now. So, you know, we're happy where we're at with the team, and we're just looking forward to get back on that pitch and playing again. You know, we got a really good bunch of guys, good dressing room, you know, good team morale, and we got a bunch of leaders in that dressing room that are looking after the young boys, and everybody's anxious now just to get back on that pitch. But, you know, I think I'm happy where we're at, and I've enjoyed that first season, so I'm looking forward to getting back at it again.
Quickly, just about the first season, you know, what was something you're most pleased with, and also what are you hoping to see moving forward, you know, from the league-wide and also from the club?
I think for me, the biggest shock was how good some of these young Canadian players were. Yeah. You know, I think it shocked a lot of people to stand there, because you're starting something brand new. You have no idea what it's going to be like. And you got to give credit to the coaches across the league. You know, they built good squads. They played some good football. And there were some entertaining games. And it was good to see these young Canadian players and coaches finally get to express themselves and showcase their talent. So that for me is what I really took away from year one, was just how good the league was and how good these young Canadian boys are.
Mm-hmm. In terms of development, where do you guys stand in this, and what are you guys doing with youth development?
I mean, right now we're just giving opportunity to young Canadians. You know, the youth development, that's difficult right now, because we've got to focus on building this league you know,
Yes.
getting this domestic league up and running.
Mm-hmm.
And I think down the line, I think the CPL will probably put something in place where, you know, they can really kind of focus on the youth and help develop. But right now it's letting the local clubs continue to develop the players, and we're the pro team there looking to pluck a few of these young Canadian boys and get them into that pro ranking, pro team.
I have to ask, winning a major tournament of the Gold Cup in 2000, what was your favorite moment at that time?
I mean, winning it, obviously.
Yeah.
What time's winning it, Jimmy?
You know, that beating Colombia in the final 2-0 was great. We had a good team. We had a bunch of guys that worked hard for each other, and you know, we were all winners. We wanted to win.
Yeah.
And that in the pro level, international level, that's all this game is about winning.
Yeah.
You know, it's a job, and you've got to win. And you know, we were in a good position that we were on a good roll. We had some momentum, and we just felt unstoppable. We just felt like we were a group of guys that nobody was going to beat us. And you know, it was something else when you pick up that trophy and you're holding it over your head, going, "We're the best team in CONCACAF." It was a great achievement.
Was that the best ever Canadian squad ever assembled?
You know, the squad was great. I mean, look, today they've got some talent. You know, the squad is fantastic. I mean, these guys should be going to a World Cup with the talent that we have on that national team. Mm-hmm. You know, but back then we had a great squad, a good bunch of players. Most of us were all playing over in Europe. Mm-hmm. We ended up winning a Gold Cup. Then we finished third, I think, in 2002. We went to Confederation Cup as well. We got invited to the Copa America.
Yeah.
So we had a national team that was gaining success and you know, and playing on some of the big stages in the world, which was amazing. So hopefully this next group can do the same thing and win a Gold Cup and play in a Confederation Cup. You know, it'd be great to see them because you know we've got the talent. Now it's just getting the best out of them.
Playing at a big stage, who was one player that you played against that you were shocked, or not shocked, but you were just amazed of how?
Ronaldo.
Yeah.
Ronaldo was unbelievable. He was so good, you know, so powerful. You don't realize how big and strong he is until you play against him.
Yeah.
What a player he is.
Yeah.
That was which tournament? Was it Gold Cup or?
What's that?
The game against Brazil.
No, against Brazil was against Cristiano Ronaldo.
Oh, Cristiano.
Okay.
Sorry, I know you played against Brazil as well.
No, but we played against Brazil in the Confederation Cup.
That's awesome.
We gotta ask them, in terms of the difference between club football and international football, you know, what is that? What was that? And you know, wearing that Canadian jersey, what was the difference?
Well, now you're representing your country,
Yeah.
and the international football is different. It's different from club football. You know, you don't have much time to prepare. You know, you finish your league game, you're on a flight, you're coming back home, or you're going wherever the game is. You're landing, you're training with the guys for 3 days, going over tactics, and then you're playing a match. So your game prep is completely different. And whatever country you're playing, it's completely different football. Yes. You know, so if we were playing against European teams, you know, it'd be a bit faster and a little bit more direct and, you know, the bigger, stronger. But then if we're in CONCACAF and we're playing against Honduras, El Salvador, you know, they slow the tempo right down. They're going to make it miserable for you. They're going to be falling over. You're going to play against Mexico. Mexico's going to keep the ball. So now you got to be organized defensively. If you're playing against the States are going to be more like us, where it's athletic and it's back and forth. And so every game that you played was completely different. And the brand of football was completely different depending on who you were playing against.
That's awesome. So what we're going to do, Jim, is as we're closing, we're going to ask you a few questions. Jesse's going to ask you 4 questions. He's going to give you a quiz on who would you rather have on your team. So I'll let Jesse ask those questions.
So yeah, Jimmy, keep your manager's cap on. So we're going to start from the back there. In terms of building your team, who would you have as your keeper? Oliver Kahn or Gianluigi Buffon?
Buffon.
Buffon. Easy. Okay. Center back, Maldini or Cannavaro?
Maldini.
Oh, I gotta ask why.
Because he's a lefty. And he
We like
play
the
left
biased
back.
responses. We like biased responses. In your midfield, Pirlo or Xavi?
Xavi.
Perfect.
I gotta ask in the midfield, who would you rather have, Lampard, Scholes, or Steven Gerrard?
Scholes all day long. Best midfielder ever.
Thank you, thank you. And then we'll let you pick the striker. Who's leading the line for Jim Brennan?
Ronaldo. Cristiano Ronaldo.
Cristiano?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jim.
No, I appreciate you taking the time, and we wish you all the best. Hopefully this season comes along.
All right. Thank you very much, guys.
Perfect, Jimmy.